On January 15th, 1919, this storage tank burst, sending over 2 million gallons of molasses hurtling through the streets of North Boston at 35 miles an hour. A total of 21 people were killed and 150 were injured. Molasses is a byproduct of converting sugarcane or beets into sugar. It can be fermented to produce ethanol, a key ingredient of both alcoholic beverages and munitions. The disaster occurred at the Purity Distilling Company facility located at 529 Commercial Street. The tank was 50 feet, 15 meters tall, and stored molasses until they were transferred to the Purity ethanol plant in nearby Cambridge. On the day of the disaster, temperatures in Boston had risen above 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 4 degrees Celsius, considerably warmer than the previous few days. The day prior, a ship had delivered a fresh load of molasses, which were placed in the tank and mixed with the existing colder molasses. At approximately 12:30 p.m., the tank burst open and collapsed. Witnesses reported that they felt the ground shake and heard a roar as it collapsed, a long rumble similar to the passing of a train, and others reported a tremendous crashing like thunder and a sound like a machine gun as the rivets shot out of the tank. The collapse generated a wave of molasses 25 feet, 8 meters high at its peak, moving at 35 miles an hour, 56 kilometers an hour. The wave was so powerful that steel panels from the burst tank were driven against the girders of the nearby elevated railway structure. A streetcar was tipped momentarily off the tracks, and nearby buildings were swept off their foundations and crushed. Several blocks were flooded by up to 3 feet of molasses. The Boston Post reported, quote, "Molasses, waist deep, covered the street and swirled and bubbled about the wreckage. Here and there struggled a form. Whether it was animal or human being was impossible to tell. Only an upheaval, a thrashing about in the sticky mass, showed where any life was. Horses died like so many flies on sticky flypaper. The more they struggled, the deeper in the mess they were ensnared. Human beings, men and women, suffered likewise." Structures and buildings were not the only objects in the firing line. The Boston Globe reported that people were, quote, "picked up by a rush of air and hurled many feet." One truck was thrown into Boston Harbor by the wave. Once the wave dissipated, the millions of gallons of molasses thickened, trapping many people, making their rescue very difficult. About 150 people were injured and 21 people and several horses killed. Some were crushed by the wave and drowned. Many victims were so covered in molasses that they were difficult to recognize. Some were swept into the nearby harbor and found several months later. In the aftermath of the disaster, 119 residents brought a class action lawsuit, one of the first in Massachusetts, against the United States Industrial Alcohol Company, which had bought Purity Distilling 2 years earlier. The company, however, claimed the tank had been blown up by anarchists, as the ingredients was to be used to make munitions. After 3 years of hearings, the company was told to pay $628,000 in damages, almost $10 million in today's money. So what caused the disaster? The tank, built in 1915, was of poor construction and not tested sufficiently. Leaks were common, so common in fact that the tank was painted brown to hide the leakage. The tank's rivets were also in a bad way, displaying multiple signs of fatigue. It was only a matter of time before the tank burst. The tank was not rebuilt, and the area instead became a yard for the Boston Elevated Railway. A small plaque was erected, which read, "On January 15, 1919, a molasses tank at 529 Commercial Street exploded under pressure, killing 21 people.